Today, we're doing something a little different. We are stepping directly into the mind of history's greatest military mastermind to execute a lifelong obsessive vendetta. We aren't just looking at a war today, we're looking right through the eyes of Hannibal Barca as he systematically dismantles the greatest power of the ancient world. Get ready, because you're about to see exactly how one man used unparalleled psychological manipulation to bring the mighty Roman Republic to its absolute knees.
So picture this, it's 219 BCE, and the hatred between Carthage and Rome is just boiling over. Hannibal has just laid siege to the Roman-allied city of Saguntum. In response, Rome sends an ambassador to Carthage, demanding Hannibal be handed over to them. And this ambassador arrogantly stands before the Carthaginian Senate and delivers an absolute mic drop of an ultimatum. He says, "I bring with me war and peace. Take which you please." After 23 years of swallowing Roman arrogance, the Senate erupts. "We accept it," they shout. War is chosen. But to actually get why this hatred ran so deep, we gotta rewind a bit. To understand the sheer depth of Hannibal's hatred, you have to go back to March 241 BCE. Carthage's great general, Hamilcar Barca, who is Hannibal's father, has literally never lost a battle on the ground. But Carthage's navy gets destroyed, and the politicians back home force Hamilcar to surrender, officially ending the First Punic War. Enraged, Hamilcar takes his 9-year-old son Hannibal to the temple of their god Baal-Haman. There, he forces the young boy to swear a blood oath that he will never ever be a friend to Rome. So this entire war we're talking about, it isn't just politics. It's a traumatized kid keeping a lifelong promise to a humiliated father.
Now, Rome wasn't just victorious. They were, frankly, greedy. They demanded a crippling 3,200 silver talents from Carthage. And add insult to injury, they opportunistically stole the islands of Sardinia and Corsica when Carthage was simply too weak to defend them. For Hannibal, watching all this unfold as he grew up, and eventually taking command of the army in 221 BCE, every single Roman transgression was a deeply personal insult, fueling his vengeance. Hannibal knew exactly what he was up against. The Roman Republic operated like a massive sledgehammer, just brute force, sheer numbers, led by politicians who were completely desperate for personal glory before their one-year terms expired. Hannibal, on the other hand, well, he made himself into a scalpel. He realized a timeless truth. You don't just fight an army, you fight the mind of the man leading it. He relied on psychological manipulation, elite cavalry, and a profound, almost terrifying patience. He was basically a mastermind playing chess against a lumbering Goliath. To catch this Goliath off guard, Hannibal does the unthinkable. While Rome sends an army to Spain, fully expecting him to be there, he executes a plan of sheer, calculated audacity. He marches war elephants and tens of thousands of men right across the freezing Alps in late fall. He sacrifices half his entire army to the brutal elements, half. But to Hannibal, this is just a necessary price. By bringing the war directly to Italy, he taps into a gold mine of new troops, local Celtic tribes who absolutely despise Roman oppression. Hannibal's sudden arrival sparks the Battle of Ticinus in 218 BCE. When a Roman scouting patrol bumps into Hannibal's forces, he instantly uses the moment to confirm his tactical superiority. Recognizing his cavalry advantage, he unleashes his elite Numidian horsemen, completely overwhelming the Romans. Consul Scipio is gravely wounded and falls from his horse. But then, in a wildly dramatic moment, he's miraculously saved by his 16-year-old son, who literally cuts through fleeing soldiers to rescue his dad. Hold on to that kid's name, by the way. We're definitely coming back to him later. Okay, so the injured Scipio warned his co-consul Sempronius Longus to just wait out the approaching winter. But Hannibal sees right through Longus. He knows Longus is at the tail end of his one-year term as consul. If he waits for spring, the next guy gets all the glory of defeating Hannibal. That political desperation makes him completely predictable. Hannibal perfectly diagnoses this weakness and decides to completely weaponize the consul's impatience. And that brings us to the Battle of Tribia, which is just a masterpiece of physical disparity engineered entirely by Hannibal. On a dark, freezing December morning, he sends light cavalry to harass the Roman camp, baiting the hot-headed Longus. The consul rushes his 40,000 men right out of bed, without any food, and forces them to wade across a freezing river in pursuit. They emerge soaking wet, starving, and totally exhausted. Meanwhile, Hannibal's men? They've been sleeping in. They are well-rested, fed, and completely covered in oil to protect their skin from the biting cold. It's brilliant.
Even exhausted, the massive Roman infantry pushes hard,
But Hannibal is just watching, patiently waiting. The night before, you see, he had carefully hidden his brother Mago, along with 2,000 elite troops inside a dried, overgrown riverbed right there on the battlefield. When the time is absolutely perfect, Mago's troops emerge from the shadows like monsters and smash directly into the Roman rear guard. The trap shuts. The Roman army is completely surrounded, and they take a staggering 20,000 casualties.
With Longus defeated, Rome elects consul Gaius Flaminius. Hannibal immediately studies his new prey. Like his predecessor, Flaminius is super eager for fame. But crucially, he earned his fame by terrorizing and killing the Celtic tribes in northern Italy. Talk about a massive stroke of dramatic irony, because Hannibal's army is now absolutely packed with Celtic warriors who are itching to rip this specific man to shreds. Knowing Flaminius is desperate to fight, Hannibal sets the stage for a masterpiece of deception.
At the Battle of Lake Trasimene, Hannibal literally turns the environment into a weapon. Finding a narrow road pinned tightly beside the lake, he sets up a decoy camp at the very end of it. Under the cover of night, he sneaks his newly grown 50,000-man army up into the hills overlooking the path. As Flaminius marches his men down the road the next morning, a thick fog rises from the lake. The Romans are essentially blind. They engage the decoy troops ahead, completely unaware that Hannibal's entire army is watching them from above like predators.
When Hannibal finally gives the order, the earth shakes. Carthaginian and Celtic warriors pounce from the misty hills, attacking the blinded Romans from the flank and rear. The leaderless Romans panic, and the results are just horrifying. Flaminius is quickly recognized and slaughtered by the vengeful Celts. Panicked Roman soldiers are pushed backward into the lake, desperately trying to swim, but helplessly dragged down by their heavy armor. In just a few hours, the lake is dyed blood red. 30,000 Romans are killed or captured in what is still the largest ambush in history.
At this point, Rome is terrified. Hannibal is a literal existential threat. So they elect a dictator, Fabius Maximus. Fabius looks at Hannibal and realizes, okay, you cannot beat this guy in a straight fight. Instead, he implements what we now call the Fabian strategy. By shadowing Hannibal, avoiding head-on battles, and constantly harassing supply lines, Fabius essentially neutralizes Hannibal's psychological edge. It actually works, slowly exhausting Hannibal and threatening his grand design. But the proud Roman citizens absolutely hate it. They call Fabius a coward.
The following year, the proud Roman citizens can't stand the delay anymore. Driven by ego, they decide to build the ultimate sledgehammer, an army of 86,000 men. This is the largest army Rome had ever fielded. Politicians and former consuls actually rushed to the front lines just to witness the inevitable fall of the monster from Africa in person. They are completely convinced that sheer brute force will overwhelm Hannibal's mind. But Hannibal is about to teach history a very, very brutal lesson about arrogance. At Cannae, Hannibal waits precisely for the day the hot-headed consul Varro is in command. Varro packs his infantry into a massive, thick column in the center, the ultimate sledgehammer, right? Hannibal counters with a terrifying psychological gamble. He places his weakest troops, the Celts and Iberians, in the center, bowing outward toward the Romans. And to ensure they don't break and run, Hannibal and his brother intentionally stand right there in that weak center with them.
So how do you defeat an army twice your size? Well, you use their own momentum against them. Varro's massive Roman column smashes into Hannibal's weak center. As the center bows backward, the Romans push deeper and deeper, convinced they're winning. But as they eagerly cram themselves forward, Hannibal unleashes the elite African heavy infantry he hid on the extreme flanks. Those flanks turn inward. His cavalry routs the Roman horsemen and sweeps around to seal the rear. The trap is sprung.
What happens next is pure claustrophobic nightmare fuel. Hannibal has pulled off the impossible, a double envelopment of a larger army. As the African infantry pushes inward, the 80,000 Roman soldiers are compressed tighter and tighter into what becomes known as the Circle of Death. The panic is absolute. The Romans are packed so densely together that their arms are literally pinned to their sides. They can't even lift their swords to swing. They are completely immobilized, just waiting for their end.
I want you to pause for a second and just consider this number: 100. Once the Romans were fully trapped and immobilized, Hannibal's army went to work. Historians estimate that during the climax of the battle, 100 Romans died every single minute. The slaughter was methodical, terrifying, and devastatingly efficient. Over 30,000 gallons of blood were spilled onto the dirt at Cannae.
By nightfall, the brutal work is done. 70,000 lifeless Roman bodies are left piled on the battlefield. Think back to those arrogant Roman politicians who traveled to the front lines, eager to watch Hannibal fall. Yeah, they were dead among the infantry. The massive sledgehammer that Rome believed was invincible had been completely dismantled by a general who understood human psychology better than anyone else alive.
And this brings us to the devastating culmination of Hannibal's oath, 20%. That is the portion of Rome's entire military-aged male population wiped out in just this one single day. A staggering demographic catastrophe. From the traumatized 9-year-old boy in a temple, Hannibal Barca had achieved the absolute zenith of his worldview. He proved his father right and brought the mighty Roman Republic to its absolute knees.
But here is where I'm going to leave you with a really fascinating question. Out of 86,000 Roman soldiers at Cannae, less than 10,000 actually managed to escape the slaughter. Among them, scrambling out of the dust and blood, was a 17-year-old military tribune, Scipio the Younger. Remember him? The very same kid who had saved his father at the Battle of Tychnus? Hannibal achieved his ultimate vengeance, but by letting this one boy survive the trap, did he inadvertently forge the exact Roman capable of finally defeating him? You'll have to keep exploring history to find out. Thanks for joining us on this explainer. See you next time.